Welcome to the Green Nurse Podcast, Clinical Conversations with the Green Nurses at Holistic Caring, where we bring hope and inspiration for growth and healing. And we are here to change the dialogue and stigma around what it means to feel good and be high. Hence the H for hope, I for inspiration, G for growth, and H for healing. And I hope this video here brings you a little bit of hope, inspiration, growth, and healing. And then we're going to get started on our topic of the day. We're here to educate and empower patients to make choices that are best for them. We're also here to decrease stigma around what it means to feel good and be high. Hence the H for hope, I for inspiration, G for growth, and H for healing. The Green Nurse is a holistic cannabis nurse that teaches on the endocannabinoid system and the safe utilization of cannabis and other progressive tools to help people reach a better quality of life.
I was cannabis agnostic for many, many years. And you know, the more research I did, the more I discovered that cannabis is this amazing medicine.
I was told that I had a 4-stage pancreatic cancer. The doctor really told me he couldn't do anything else. He gave me her name and she called me and she came to my house. She started to give me cannabis. My oncologist was puzzled because he couldn't find the cancer anymore.
All of the learning that we get comes from the Green Nurses Group, comes from their support, comes from their guidance. I trust everything that she says.
Simply meet people where they're at. The plant doesn't, stress to grow, so we don't stress to share it. We're healing people.
Cannabis has been used as a medicine for tens upon thousands of years. Here's the big message. Cannabis needs to be federally legal. We need to have laws that are the same across all 50 states that allow access to anyone and everyone who wants to utilize this powerful medicine.
Well, there we are, growing in health. And that's really what it's all about, helping patients to do what? Live a better quality of life. And so here we are today, and I am here with my co-host and business partner, Nurse Elisabeth Mack. She is the CEO and founder of Holistic Caring. My name is Sherri Mack, and I'm the VP of Nursing. And we are going to get started today. We're going to be presenting on cannabinoids, Alzheimer's, dementia, and how we can help these folks live a better quality of life. So we're going to get started.
All right. Well, thank you, Nurse Sherri. It's a pleasure to be here, and this is an encore presentation. We initially presented this on 4/20, April 20th in San Diego for the Aging Life Care Associates, and this is for you and for us to be able to have this recorded episode instead of the live version. So my name again is Elisabeth. I'm with Holistic Caring. Sherri is the Green Nurse. We've merged our companies, and together we help bridge the gap between conventional and cannabis therapeutics. So our learning objectives today, as we go through this presentation for seniors and their health, is to figure out how we can optimize their golden years naturally, helping understand Alzheimer's dementia, symptoms, conventional care and the limitations, understanding the endocannabinoid system and the potential to modulate dementia, understanding the potential of these cannabinoids to relieve symptoms and improve quality of life and how they might do so, dosing strategies and best practices for introducing them into life and the treatment plan, and then research topics on dementia and cannabis, and as well as finding your role. So whether you're a care manager, a nurse case manager, or just somebody who loves seniors like we do, find your role and join us. So a quick tribute first to Raphael Mechoulam. He is the Israeli scientist and researcher who discovered THC and synthesized it into the chemical structure. It gave us the understanding of that and CBD and all of the other phytocannabinoids. Worked in Israel for over 40 years, published over 350 studies, and just passed last month, and we miss him terribly. So with that, we just want to tee up the science as to what we're going to be talking about today. A lot of times we talk about the theoretical feel good of how cannabis might be able to help you have a better quality of life. But Raphael Mechoulam really broke down the understanding to help us understand the endocannabinoid system. And with that, I'm going to hand it back to Sherri, where we're going to get started on the core of the presentation.
There we go. Baby boomers and beyond, the golden years. So Alzheimer's, dementia and cannabis care. And so this is an image of my mother. Happy birthday, Mom. She just turned 80 this year. And one of the things she's been asking me over the course of the years, every birthday, is it normal as we age to lose our memory? Can memory loss be prevented? And so having these deep, rich conversations with her, we got into a discussion and what is really important to our seniors as they age: cognition, remembering things, agency, independence, movement, and quality of life. Those are the most important things that we see. And we don't die of old age. We die of old age related diseases that have to do with inflammation, chronic inflammation, and a lot of it has to do with our lifestyle choices. So what are the challenges that we see with our seniors today? Many of them come to us and they have very poor health literacy, meaning that they don't understand the choices that they're making, and they're making uninformed choices, often to their detriment. A lot of older folks have issues with metabolism, slower metabolism. As you get older, they have difficulty clearing pharmaceuticals. And what we see a lot with these old folks is many of them are on lots of pharmaceuticals. So polypharmacy is if you are on 5 or more pharmaceuticals, there is a 50% chance that they're interacting. If you're on 10 or more, there's 100% that they're interacting. And so what do we see as clinicians? We see adverse drug events. We see patients falling, and we see admissions to the hospital unnecessarily. So what is happening here? All of this lifestyle contributes, poor lifestyle choices contribute to chronic inflammation, which then leads to neuroinflammation. And that's what happens in our brain as we start to develop Alzheimer's and dementia symptoms. So Alzheimer's affects millions and costs billions. This is a picture of Elizabeth and her mom. Elizabeth's mom did have dementia as well as cancer, and cannabinoids were a pivotal part of her treatment plan to help her get through the disease process, to help her live a better quality of life at the end of life. So 55 million people worldwide have some form of dementia. 6 million people in the United States with Alzheimer's dementia, 200,000 people under the age of 65 with early onset dementia. And over 60 to 80% of all dementias are Alzheimer's disease related. And so the cost is exorbitant. $321 billion were spent in out-of-pocket expenses for Alzheimer's disease healthcare, long-term care, and hospice. And then an additional $271 billion in unpaid caregiving. So think about that cost. Are these patients really benefiting? And so the interesting thing, if you look here underneath Elizabeth's mom's slide, is that PET scans reveal biomarkers 20 to 30 years prior to Alzheimer's disease symptoms. So retinal scans looking in people's eyes can actually detect the beta amyloid plaques, which are plaques that grow erratically, as one of the hallmarks of Alzheimer's disease, tangling up the neurons and the nerve cells and robbing the person of normal cognition. So to get started, what is Alzheimer's disease? Well, Alzheimer's disease is a neurological disease of the nervous system. It's a chronic degenerative disease of the brain where we see neuroinflammation that is disrupting brain proteins. So we have beta amyloid plaques and tau tangles destroying the neurons, affecting memory, thinking, and the ability to complete tasks. And causes are multifactorial: genetics, environment, unhealthy lifestyle. And some of the contributing factors that we see are those that aren't exercising, obesity, hypertension, diabetes, depression, smoking, and head injuries. Actually, Alzheimer's disease is considered to be type 3 diabetes, right? A lot of these patients do have metabolic disorders that contribute to the inflammation that leads to the neuroinflammation. And then here we said poor lifestyle choices, creating the inflammation, the neuroinflammation, and disrupting the brain signaling. So just take a quick peek here at the difference between the Alzheimer's brain and the healthy brain. So you can see the healthy brain on the left, and the Alzheimer's brain on the right is a little bit smaller. It's a little shrunken up, and things are not connecting properly. So what happens in Alzheimer's disease is the brain proteins fail to function. And so what you do is you get these plaques that are in clumps. They clump together, disrupting cellular communication. And we need to understand our cells communicate with one another. The other proteins in the brain get tangled up, these tau tangles. And these proteins actually that are tangled up prevent or disrupt the nutrient transport into the brain cell, which actually causes damage to the cells. So over time, the Alzheimer's brain shrinks, it loses neurons, the cerebral cortex and the hippocampus become smaller, where patients are losing memory and executive functioning. The ventricles become larger and more dysfunctional, and we see a progressive cognitive decline as more cells are damaged, there's more neuroinflammation, and cell signaling is impaired with less connectivity. So you can knock on the door and no one's home, right? And so what we see with patients is a spectrum very similar to autism. The Alzheimer's disease spectrum can be from mild, moderate to severe. And as the disease progresses, we see weight loss, anorexia, an inability to communicate, multiple infections, loss of bowel and bladder, difficulty swallowing, somnolence, and then eventually the patient dies. Conventional versus holistic, choices, choices, choices. Do we truly ever give patients a choice in what they want to do and how to manage their care, right? This is where it comes to health literacy. What we're seeing is a lot of patients are making uninformed choices because why? They're used to it, right? They're used to being handed the pills and the procedures because it's the current standard of care. And so the issue with this is the polypharmacy that we see, the side effects, the adverse effects, the allergies, and black box warnings. And so we start that trajectory of despair where there's pills, there's procedures, there's side effects, and we keep going down that road. So what is missing from the all pharmaceutical approach? Whole person care, right? We talk about total healthcare, THC. So holistic care is endocannabinoid system care, where we're looking at the entire endocannabinoid dome, the endocannabinoid system, cannabinoid supplements, botanicals, lifestyle as medicine, and it includes conventional care, focusing on and supporting the most important system in our body. So what we do as nurses is we like to look at both, right? That's what we do. We combine them both. Conventional care is very, very important, right? But when we're bringing in other modalities, what we're doing is we're personalizing care and empowering patients. And this fosters biopsychosocial spiritual healing, mind, body, spirit. And this combination approach that we take maximizes benefits and minimizes harms. We truly are able to reach new levels of wellness with patients. Okay, cannabis and Alzheimer's disease, can it help? Absolutely, it can. Cannabis can help. What we see is it bridges the gap from what pharmaceuticals aren't providing to patients. Pharmaceuticals are actually working better at lower doses. We're seeing decreased side effects due to these lower doses. We're seeing decreased symptoms and improved quality of life because cannabinoids can slow down neurodegeneration. They protect the brain cells as a neuroprotectant. Is an antioxidant. It protects from oxidative stress. Oxidative stress contributes to inflammation, which then contributes to neuroinflammation. It's an anti-inflammatory, decreasing inflammation throughout the body and in the brain, and actually helps us to create new neurons or nerve cells, and this is called neurogenesis. So preclinical research at the Salk Institute shows that THC may erode amyloid plaques, slowing the progression of Alzheimer's disease. And clinically, as nurses, we are seeing this. Okay, so here we go. A lot of patients that come to us are on multiple pharmaceuticals. As these patients start to decline, they become very depressed. They're not themselves anymore. They forget. They're making bad choices, not because of any fault of their own, but it's just that they're losing the agency to make decisions. And so with the depression, patients are being put on all of these other medications. Like I said, we're not anti-pharma, but what's important is to know side effects, adverse drug effects. And the most thing that we see with a lot of these pharmaceuticals is a drug nutrient depletion. specifically B vitamins. And when you understand B vitamins bathe your central nervous system. So the last thing we want to do is give a patient something that's going to make them more depressed. So it's really important to know all of these things. So what can we do? Well, guess what? CBD can help with depression, right? So when you take CBD, it directly interacts with serotonin and dopamine receptors. It influences brain activity and the release of serotonin and dopamine throughout the body. CBD can also protect the brain, right? So your brain works hard to keep itself functioning, right? All through disease or drug abuse, it can convert to malfunction. This is where CBD comes in handy. So we see CBD as an anti-inflammatory and antioxidant in cell growth. So inflammation is normal, right? It's necessary for survival. However, too much inflammation can cause damage. So CBD can regulate the inflammatory response and the number of immune cells that are sent out to attack those pathogens. So cannabidiol as an antioxidant works to prevent and handle toxicity in the brain, allowing for less overstimulation and more functional communication between cells. And then cell growth, this neurogenesis, right? CBD has shown to promote hippocampus neurogenesis, which means that it helps cells in the hippocampus to grow. And this can also contribute to the antidepressant effects of CBD and also improve memory. To the endocannabinoid system. So this is how and why it all works, right? Cannabinoid therapeutics is much more than just cannabis. We have an endocannabinoid system that is the master regulatory system of all of our other systems. The endocannabinoid system is the largest neurotransmitter signaling system. It regulates all 11 organ systems, our immune system, and all the neurotransmitters. So I want you to look at this umbrella and just imagine this umbrella as being your body. Each of the spokes of the umbrella here represent one of your systems. The different color fabric pieces that attach to the spokes of the umbrella are those neurotransmitter signaling systems that give messages. So dopamine signaling, serotonin signaling, opioid signaling. The master signaling system of all of it is the endocannabinoid system. And so it's a balancing system that acts like a switchboard going on and off. It's a feedback loop correcting cell signaling to restore balance. So it reacts to stress or changes, triggering a release of endocannabinoids to shower on our umbrella. We have cannabinoid receptors on all of the cell surfaces of all of our 11 organ systems. And we have cannabinoid receptors at the neurotransmitter signaling junction site. So basically, when something happens in our body, we release these endocannabinoids to shower on our umbrella to tell our body to do something or not doing something to bring our body into balance. So the endocannabinoid system is a conductor regulating both the fight or flight response to keep us safe and also getting us back into the relaxation response where we function optimally. And when we talk about the endocannabinoid dome, it is the larger environment that interacts with the endocannabinoid system. And mediators of the endocannabinoid dome are food and nutrition, mind-body techniques, the microbiome, the lipid dome, as well as cannabis constituents. Why cannabis works, right? So what are cannabinoids? So cannabinoids are molecules that interact with the endocannabinoid system. And there's 3 different types. Endocannabinoids we make internally. We make anandamide and 2-AG. Phytocannabinoids are made externally by the plant. CBD, THC, a lot of the other minor cannabinoids, CBDA, CBGA, THCA, CBG, CBN, CBC. And then we have synthetic cannabinoids with the pharmaceutical make. So an example of that would be Sativex, Epidiolex, Marinol, and all of these interact with the endocannabinoid system. So what I found most fascinating was how the THC molecule mimics the anandamide molecule. So if you look at this, you can actually see both of the molecules that are made, and they're structurally very similar. So this allows for THC to mimic anandamide to connect to the nerve cell receptor in its place. So the interesting thing about this is that, as we talked about in the beginning, THC was the phytocannabinoid that the plant makes, was discovered by Raphael Mechoulam in 1964. So throughout research and studying throughout the years, they wanted to know how and why this molecule could work on multiple different systems all at the same time. And so what they did was they injected synthetic THC into the human body, and under radiographic imaging, they were able to see that we lit up like a Christmas tree. We have CB1 and CB2 receptors on all of the cell surfaces of all of our organ systems. So we actually have more CB1 and CB2 receptors in our body than any other receptors, providing feedback to correct signaling between cells to keep us back into balance. And so then CB1 and CB2 receptors were discovered in 1988. And then in 1992, Professor Lumir Hannes, who we see here, actually discovered anandamide and 2-AG, our endocannabinoids. Because here's the thing, if we have receptors in our body, we don't have receptors because of cannabis. We have receptors in our body because we make something very similar to the plant. And so I want to describe the difference between THC and anandamide. THC the plant makes, anandamide we make. The THC molecule is 10 times stronger than the anandamide molecule, or the anandamide molecule is 1/10 the strength. So that is why when we educate as clinicians, you don't need a lot of THC to have cannabis work for you as medicine. And then conditions associated with the endocannabinoid deficiency. So if you go back here to the umbrella, right? We produce internal endogenous cannabinoids upon demand to shower on our umbrella. So if you can imagine up here, if we're not getting messages to all of our systems, what happens, right? So what we see a lot with patients is they have an endocannabinoid deficiency where they're not making enough of their own internal endogenous cannabinoids to provide that cell signaling correction. And so you can see normal neurotransmitters flow from presynaptic to postsynaptic, So in other words, dopamine flows one way, serotonin flows one way, but the endocannabinoid system is a two-way communication signal, the retrograde signaling. So it floats from postsynaptic to presynaptic to nudge the cell to get it to do something. So the endocannabinoid system is how cannabis works in the body. It is the maestro to the symphony that every physiological system in the human body, and its role is to keep us healthy. So as you can see here, there are multiple conditions that are associated with the endocannabinoid deficiency. Alzheimer's disease and dementia is one of them. Endocannabinoid deficiency, what causes it, right? Well, age, as we get older, and generally that has to do with our lifestyle choices, and genetics plays a huge part in it. Diet is probably the number one thing. Fast food, fried food, fake food, artificial flavors, artificial coloring, trans fat, hydrogenated oils, high fructose corn syrup, and sugar. Lack of exercise, not moving, obesity, chronic stress, poor sleep, smoking cigarettes, chronic alcohol use, polypharmacy, if you're taking 5 or more pharmaceuticals, they're interacting. And then also you have to look at the drug nutrient depletion from multiple pharmaceutical use, diminished social interactions, lack of touch, and laughter. So all of these things, it's mind, body, spirit, all can contribute to an endocannabinoid deficiency. And so what do we do to support the endocannabinoid system and the endocannabinoid dome? You can see this huge list here, and the very, very last is cannabis and hemp products, right? Food is medicine, whole foods, adaptogens, supplements, herbs, regular exercise. Motion is the lotion. When we exercise, we produce more anandamide molecules. Meditation has been shown to increase anandamide by 168%. Mind, body, massage, therapeutic touch, acupuncture, chiropractic care, essential oils, energy work, limiting alcohol, quitting smoking, getting better sleep, social connections, laughter and play, and cannabis and hemp products. So as you can see, cannabis and hemp is at the very bottom of the list, but it's often the place where we like to start with patients because they've tried all of these things. A lot of patients will come to us and say, I've done that. Well, this is where we want to introduce microdosing of hemp and cannabis products to help wake up that endocannabinoid system, get them moving and getting them to support their system using other modalities. Supporting patients with CBD. This is where we get started on CBD. So what is CBD? CBD is a cannabinoid that is found in both the cannabis and the hemp plant. Cannabinoids, as we know, interact with the endocannabinoid system. So for new folks that are out there, the difference between CBD from cannabis plant and the CBD from a hemp plant is a lab result. So the cannabis plant CBD has greater than 0.3% THC, and CBD from the hemp plant has less than 0.3% THC. And there are many, many different product types that are out there, but there are 3 types of CBD that we're seeing in these various products. One of them is just the isolated molecules called CBD isolate. It's the single isolated molecule of CBD, and that can be from the cannabis or the hemp plant. Then we see broad spectrum CBD, where it's whole plant medicine with 0 THC. They've actually removed the THC, so you have the rest of the plant, but these are for people that can't take THC because they're getting drug tested. And then we see full spectrum whole plant, which is less than 0.3% THC. And the entourage effect states that the whole of the plant is greater than its individual parts. And so this is why we like to use whole plant formulations. We see better results. There's just a tiny bit of THC to activate those CB1 and CB2 receptors, where CBD is working on multiple others. So what's important here is to note that 20 years ago, the United States government took out a patent on cannabinoids, 6630507. Cannabinoids are found to protect cells, tissues, and DNA from damage and decay, limiting neurological damage following ischemic insults such as stroke and trauma, or in the treatment of neurodegenerative diseases such as Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and dementia. There you have it, folks. It is written as the United States patent.
20 years ago.
20 years ago, long time. Yeah. So the power couple, right? You need them both. We need THC and CBD and the minor cannabinoids. So THC activates the CB1 and CB2 receptors. Reminder, we have CB1 and CB2 receptors on all of the cell surfaces of all of our organ systems, where CBD indirectly impacts the CB1 and CB2 receptors, but activates over 70 targets in our body. CBD is the most abundant non-impairing cannabinoid. It benefits all systems, and CBD modulates THC without taking away the medicinal effect. THC actually increases efficacy of CBD and makes it work better. And the benefits we see of THC is an anti-nausea, analgesic, it promotes sleep, it boosts the immune system, it can cause euphoria, and it does promote the relaxation response. And so the other important thing that we educate on is the biphasic nature of cannabinoids. Low doses do one thing and high doses do something else. For example, low doses of THC can relieve nausea, or high doses of THC can actually cause someone to throw up. Low doses of THC can decrease anxiety, whereas high doses of THC can cause some patients to become paranoid. So basically what we look at is CBD to THC ratios, which we're going to talk about in a minute, to maximize gains and minimize side effects. We always want THC and CBD to go together. And so when we think about if we're eating well, if we're sleeping good, if we're relaxing, we're in the relaxation response, if we're forgetting our troubles, and if we're protecting our bodies and our immune system, we have a better quality of life. Our endocannabinoid system may be functioning optimally. So cannabis chemotypes. The big takeaway from this slide is chemotype 3 is for me. Okay, chemotype 3 is there is more CBD than THC. This is where you find the full spectrum products. They're not impairing, and it promotes the relaxation response. Chemotype 2 is equal parts CBD to THC. It's a great response for most patients. However, we don't like to start there because we don't know what someone's ratio is. And then we have chemotype 1, and this is more THC than CBD. It's good for sleep, appetite, and pain. The dosing is very important when you're using THC, and we recommend older folks to use this with clinician support. So we're going to talk more on safe consumption, but literally just a reminder is taking the lower dose to get the therapeutic response. We want patients to microdose multiple times a day to mimic endocannabinoid system signaling, and personalized dosing in a care plan we utilize as clinicians to help optimize results. Methods of administration, mix and match. There are so many different products out in the market, and every day there's more and more. But what is really good for older folks is topicals. It's a great introduction to cannabis. It's a local application that's affected to the area. There's lotions, there's balms, there's rubs, there's sticks, pain sticks. there's freezers, there's sprays, and all of these things can actually help patients. Our skin is our largest organ. We have CB1 and CB2 receptors in our skin, and there's no systemic effect. You can't get high from using a topical. Transdermal patches are another option for patients. And these are good for the older folks that want to get the basal dosing, which is a little tiny bit going through their bloodstream at all times. It's for longer duration and it helps patients to acclimate to cannabinoids at lower doses. Oftentimes with the older folks, we start with tinctures because they're very easy to use. CBD dominant for the daytime, THC dominant for the night. We add the minor cannabinoids in various formulations and ratios. And that's when we talk about the chemo type 2, 1-to-1, and we add those in as needed in low doses. Sublingual strips are under the tongue, very similar to sublingual tincture that you put under your tongue, you hold for 30 seconds and swallow. The sublingual strips you just put under there and they melt and they get absorbed into the bloodstream, bypassing the gut. Edibles. Edibles are amazing, but you need to start low and go slow for sure. There are all different types of products on the market. There's cookies, there's capsules, there's gummies, there's candies, there's drinks, and there's even protein shakes, right? And so when we're introducing patients to edibles, we like them to microdose and use small amounts, 2 to 5 milligrams, and using CBD in conjunction with it. CBD can dial down the psychoactivity without taking away the effect of the THC. And basically, the more important thing is when you're taking edibles is that THC can convert in the liver and become stronger in the brain. So really important to use safety when you're using edibles. And certain patients like to use suppositories. These aren't our first line choices, but there are suppositories that are available for particular patients. And then inhalation. The older folks, we're not going to be, giving them joints and bongs. However, vaporizing cannabis flowers or oil can be very helpful for certain patients, specifically those older folks that have been used to smoking cigarettes for so long, right? So you can give them some CBD dominant hemp, 1-to-1 blends, and a little bit of indica for bedtime. So think of indica as a little bit more sedating. We don't want to rev up our older folks and get them more excited and agitated. So really looking at CBD dominant types of products. Targeted formulas, here we go. And this is the chemo type 3 formulas. Bloom Hemp has an amazing product line. And the reason why we like them is because they have a lot of different formulas that do a lot of different things. And so what we like to do for patients is mix and match and build a toolkit, right? There can be day relief, night relief, pain relief, relief for neurological, focus, immune, anxiety, and sleep. And so chemo type 3 products, more CBD than THC, whole plant, full spectrum products, 20-to-1, has minor amounts of THC with the minor cannabinoids, non-impairing and very well tolerated. Potential side effects. I wouldn't be a good nurse if I didn't talk about side effects. However, side effects are dose dependent. And we also talked about the biphasic nature of cannabinoids. Low doses do one thing, larger doses do something else. So whole plant formulations and microdosing work with a cannabis clinician can help decrease the side effects that many patients may be afraid of. So we have CBD and THC. Some of these side effects that we have seen have been very, very minimal and can be controlled with dosing. We haven't seen very many side effects with pharmaceuticals just because we space them out. And we'll talk about that in a minute. But one of the things that's really important to understand is the side effect of one patient may be the effect that another patient is looking for. So the patient that has ALS welcomes the dry mouth. The patient that has glaucoma welcomes the red eyes because it shows that the intraocular pressure is decreasing. The patient that has cachexia, muscle wasting, intractable nausea and vomiting, and inability to eat welcomes the increased appetite and the munchies. And those patients that have history of trauma, PTSD, insomnia, or hypervigilance, they welcome being drowsy and sleepy and forgetting. And then those patients that are depressed deserve to feel a little euphoria. There's nothing wrong with feeling good, and we can do that safely. And so that's why working with a clinician is very beneficial. Safety and dosing, right? We want to take the minimum effective dose to get the most therapeutic response below the threshold of being impaired. And we call this the sweet spot or Goldilocks dosing. So we encourage patients to start low and go slow. We want to microdose to mimic the endocannabinoid system. Remember, the endocannabinoid system is going on and off all day long. So we educate patients to dose at breakfast, lunch, dinner, and bedtime, and as needed. Lower doses really, really help people to utilize this in an effective way and mitigate side effects. And so we teach people to choose their primary formulation. So for the older folks, we encourage CBD rich formulations in the daytime, folding in some of the minor cannabinoids, THC rich formulations in the evening and as needed. And mostly for the older folks, if they need any additional THC, we like to use a 1-to-1 because it literally is the safest dose for them. They start to get used to the THC, can mitigate the side effects, and actually help things work better. And so stacking products is cost effective and keeps tolerance low, right? So too much THC isn't good for you, right? So we want to be able to keep the cost down, keep the tolerance low, and keep this medicine functioning in our body. So we either use topical tincture and capsule or a topical tincture and a gummy. And we do this over time, introducing this multiple different ways of administrating the cannabinoids to get a more well-rounded effect, getting that sweet spot. And with pharmaceuticals, a lot of patients are nervous that it's going to interact with their drugs, but basically the majority of drugs are metabolized through the liver, through the CYP450 enzyme. And so we don't want them to compete to break down. We want them to be able to, the pharmaceutical being taken to be used in the appropriate way, and then to add the cannabinoid. So any drugs that interact with grapefruit, we have people dose either 1 to 2 hours after taking their medication. And we encourage patients to journal and track the results and to talk to their provider. And if you have any issues with your provider, we're more than happy to talk to them as well. Shopping for safe CBD, Green Nurse approved. We have a marketplace in holistic caring. And in the marketplace, you can see that we have vetted many CBD brands. And so it's really, really important to shop for safe CBD. Don't go cheap, it's expensive. And so what we're looking for with products is we want to get our CBD from cannabis or flowering strains of hemp. And like we had talked about before, there's CBD isolate, just the isolated molecule, broad spectrum and full spectrum. We want to know that it was grown in the United States. We want to know that the company is transparent with their website, their address, their email, their customer service and support, good manufacturing practices. Are they certified? Are they testing their products for purity, potency, contaminants, and residual solvents, and accurate labels? Really, really important for patients because you can have 2 bottles of tincture. One bottle can be 300 milligrams, another bottle can be 3,000 milligrams, and that is a really big difference. One full dropper could be 10 milligrams, where the other full dropper could be 100 milligrams. So we need to know the potency and the serving size for safe dosing. And don't go cheap, it's expensive. And for patients, we always encourage them. We have the free nurse line. They can call for help, 970-404-HOPE or 4673. Biopsychosocial spiritual, supporting the journey. Healing isn't the absence of illness or disease. It's doing the best you can with what you have right here, right now. And it is truly looking at all aspects of mind, body, and spirit. Biopsychosocial spiritual. The essence of nursing is human caring for the entire human experience. So we look at all of these different things. Genetics. Is their endocannabinoid system toned? What is their metabolic status? What are they eating? What is the physical activity? What are the drugs are they taking? Are they having side effects? What are the lifestyle choices? And is it supporting the endocannabinoid system or not? And then emotional, mental wellness, personality type, coping styles, stress resilience, boundaries, balance between personal and professional, speaking up and asking for help. And then spiritual, the worldview, life goals, connection to nature, the unseen world, religion, prayer, mindfulness, meditation, breath work. All of these things support the journey. And then social connections, connecting to others, feeling part of the whole. Lifestyle is a choice, habits, health literacy, having healthy fun, laughter, and being in joy. It all goes together, and we support the patient journey. Physical benefits, mental benefits, absolutely. Cannabinoids balance the nervous system, the immune function, and stress hormones. It decreases pain, neuropathy, and muscle tension. It increases mobility by reducing pain. It increases energy by reducing pain. The mental benefits, it improves quality of sleep, relaxation, and calmness. improves feeling of well-being, decreases fatigue, anxiety, and feelings of social isolation, improves energy, and builds resilience for patient empowerment. So when you think the relaxation response is what we're seeking, it helps to cultivate an opportunity for the body to heal. And who is caring for the caregivers? So if you're out there and you have a parent, or you're a care manager and you're taking care of, all of these different patients, how are you coping with your frustration, right? So we're here for you as well. Who is caring for the caregivers? We're here for you. We can help you to cope with frustration, how to maintain patience, how to have empathy, work through grief and loss, build your own resiliency, teaching you how to de-escalate situations, how to create a reliable support system, and how to what? Shift, pivot, and adapt with ease. And as a caregiver, we can teach you how to use cannabinoid therapeutics to care for you, the caregiver. And now I'm going to flip it back over to Elisabeth, who's going to review the cannabis research on neuroinflammation, dementia, and Alzheimer's, and she's going to wrap up.
All right. Well, thank you, Nurse Sherri. So yeah, what we're going to talk about is a little bit of the high level of research and some of the information and science that we've gathered over the last 20, 30 years. When we talked about cannabinoids being neuroprotectant antioxidants, really what we're talking about is balancing the brain chemistry, glutamate, slowing that down a little bit and inhibiting some of the excitotoxicity. Cannabis is one of the chief places where we go for all of our research and literature, and Cannabis does something that is key for everybody else. So for instance, we can go to PubMed. PubMed is the repository of all of the scientific and clinical studies and all of the research that we are gathering across the world. And Cannabis takes that, breaks it down, and funnels it into the way that we can interpret these studies as lay people and clinicians. So what's clinical, what's preclinical, which is labs and animal studies with rodents generally, and then what is just cell cultures and that sort of thing. We're moving way past the cell cultures and the animal studies with respect to cannabinoids, but because they are Schedule 1, which we talked about is no medical benefits, highly addictive and dangerous, which is crazy. Cannabis needs to be descheduled, which we all know. Then we'll be able to study it more. But the studies are showing a vast response. We're seeing studies in the 70s, 80s, 90s with a clinical effect in using this with people. The studies are generally small, but what they're finding is this is working incredibly. And so when we go back up to the animal studies, the cannabinoids are modulating processing of the brain proteins. So they're seeing when they give cannabinoids, with the cannabinoids that are already in the mice, they're giving them diseases and then seeing what the physiological response is. And that's how we figure things out. Animal studies don't always translate to humans, but generally they do. And we're finding that the same thing is happening in humans. We're seeing reduced proteins, and they're seeing a lot of this in autopsies, but we're getting closer to the science and imaging to see this in real life. Reducing the inflammation and the excitotoxicity. This is that balancing of the ROS, the oxidation in our brain, and again, the excitotoxicity, making sure that the brain is balanced. And it does this with the interactive signaling between CB1, CB2. Protecting against neuroinflammation. We'll talk about CB2 in a moment, but it helps supports the brain intrinsic repair mechanism. So think about a cleaning crew that comes in at night when the office building is quiet. That's sort of what CB2 activation is. And all of those microglia are now cleaning up the brain, especially while we sleep. And that is pruning the bad stuff and enhancing the good stuff, and then neurogenesis, stimulating new brain cells, which we know still happens even up until we die. It improves blood flow in the brain. And helping get that oxygenated, rich blood flow into the hippocampus, strengthening memory and processing, as well as just enhancing blood flow. And then it doesn't worsen the Alzheimer's pathologies. A lot of times when we're looking at something that we're going to introduce as a substance for humans, we want to know, is it safe? Is it effective? And is it going to make this worse? And the answer is no. None of these cannabinoids worsen any of the Alzheimer's pathologies, which gives us that safe nudge to be able to explore. and chemotype 2 and 3 is what we really want to be working with. On these animal studies, we're seeing that CB2 receptor activation is helping with all of these things that we've just discussed, but it is reducing the memory impairment, reducing the infarct size. So if we have a stroke, it'll help to trim that down and then repair the brain after that. Like as we found out 20 years ago, cannabinoids as neuroprotectant antioxidants able to repair brain from injury, stroke, and illness, neurodegenerative illness. And then if we go down to the clinical data from 2006, they administered dronabinol, which is a synthetic version of THC, also known as Marinol, 2.5 milligrams. So we talked about that 2 milligrams. That's underneath the psychoactive threshold for psychoactive effects. And so that's a safe dose to give somebody. We're not going to do anything to trigger impairment, but we're going to get the benefits of using THC in that low dose. And what did they find? They found that it dramatically reduced nocturnal motor activity and agitation. So people got in bed, they stayed in bed, they slept, they weren't agitated, they weren't getting up. This can improve sleep, improve their pain, improve well-being, reduce caregiver demand, and make it less of a burden. So what the question is, why are we not experimenting with this in assisted living and nursing homes today? We have dronabinol available. Everybody could prescribe it on the clinical basis. And it really is just stigma. They don't know. They're using antipsychotics and benzodiazepines, which we know are more harmful to seniors. So I implore all clinicians to give it a try. And then just looking at the endocannabinoid system, it modulates every pathological process in the brain during all phases. So in early phases, the receptors are increasing. And we see that what's happening is the receptors are signaling that there is distress in the tissues, looking for the endocannabinoids. But the endocannabinoids are not being created. They're not synthesized from the lipids and the fatty acids that we should be eating in a good diet. It's just not being made. And so this is why when we supplement with phytocannabinoids, we can bring that up and repair some of this. But as the receptors are sitting there without activation, they start declining. And so when we look at autopsies, there's very little CB1 and CB2 receptors left in these cell membranes because they've given up. And what we want to do is, as we're working with these patients, is continue the full spectrum supplements to inspire the cleanup and the CB1 connections in the hippocampus, re-stimulating memory and doing that sort of thing. THC is an acetylcholinesterase inhibitor, and that's an enzyme that breaks down acetylcholine. When we have acetylcholine in our brain, we are making and preserving memories. Our hippocampal regions are functioning optimally. When we're not making them, they're not. And what we're finding is that these drugs, my mother was on all of them, galantine, donepezil, etc. Memantine is the drug brand name, but all of these are short-lived. So what that means is they work for 3 to 6 months, and then the efficacy dwindles and they stop being effective. But these patients stay on them for years, but that may be toxic. And what we're finding is that the cannabinoids can do a lot of the same functions, and they're promising and benign. They're not causing the side effects, and they are able to be given without toxicity and may slow progression. So we should be using these in our elders. And Stacy Gruber runs the mind studies over at the McLean Hospital at Harvard. And she is doing some older adult studies where they're doing imaging and that sort of thing with people that are using cannabinoids from the open market. And they're observing them and how they're working. And what they're finding is after 3 months of medical marijuana supplements, people are getting these brain scans with higher activity in the cingulate cortex, which is the activity, the area involved with paying attention, distractions, and problem solving. And the neuroimaging is revealing normalization of these brain tissues as the cognitive skills improve. And they're asking the question, is it because people feel less pain, they're sleeping better, or they're using fewer medications like opiates and benzodiazepines that cause impairment in thinking, memories, falls, and that sort of thing? Or is it a direct effect from the cannabis? So we don't know yet. We need to get deeper into the studies, but we're researching this. And the other thing is that we're drawing more correlations. One of the greatest ones that they found recently was how pain really seems to bring on Alzheimer's, just like high blood sugar levels is bringing on Alzheimer's, and metabolic issues. Pain might be causing that. And the more pain sites that people have around their body, the more that this might be happening. And it's, as you can see, is causing memory loss and hippocampal shrinkage. And that can worsen behaviors. And a lot of times, think about folks that are struggling with dementias, they're not able to communicate. If they can't tell you that they're in pain, we have untreated pain, which is going to cause more behaviors because they're uncomfortable. And so we treat the pain with cannabinoids. We're also treating everything else, the neuroinflammation, antioxidants, and we're helping them move towards better quality of life, reduce symptoms, decreased risk, increasing mobility. And that's the other great thing. When you treat pain, people move more. Motion is the lotion, as Sherri said. So getting somebody to go out and take a daily walk, and imagine what that does for their spirit and their joints and their ligaments and muscles. So. And of course, Dale Bredesen, the famous clinician, doctor who is reversing Alzheimer's. Yes, you did hear that. Go and study the Bredesen protocols. Look at the metabolic significant changes that they're making in folks adjusting blood sugars with diet and nutrition, as well as some of the cognitive exercises that they're working on. And really, looking at the ketogenic diet, really limiting those carbohydrates and boosting lean proteins and whole foods. So we want to make sure that people are eating good. And then as they're moving towards wholeness, we are finding better days for them.
When the brain is supported, it thrives. And when it's not, it shuts down.
Right. Yeah, and the imaging that he is showing are really reversing some of these plaques, showing the tau. It's almost as if you're taking an image of a brain scan with glioblastoma, and you're seeing the tumor shrink. We're doing the same thing with some of these brain deposits and looking at the cognitive scores. So now imagine if we add CBD to this work, right? When the brain is supported, it thrives. When it's not, it shuts down. Imagine if we give CBD to accentuate the progress that we're making with the lifestyle modalities, and then fold in some nurse coaching. So it is a harm reduction standpoint. To close up, we think about this and comparing and contrasting. What we need to do is look at the drugs that we're putting into our bodies to reduce symptoms. NSAIDs, they can cause trouble with the kidneys, heart, and GI, cause hypertension. Then you've got more drugs for that. Hypnotics and benzodiazepines that our elders are taking, that can help create falls and other adverse events. And opioids are numbing our elders. Most people are on something, morphine or oxycodone at the end of life, and it may or may not be necessary. If we use cannabinoids, we can make them more present and less numb, and give them a better quality of life and more presence with their families. And according to all of these studies, these drugs are causing brain changes which are negative. So when we're looking at these drugs, it makes sense to try cannabis in that compare and contrast to give people a better day. And that was quoted by Peter Grinspoon, who is a Harvard physician. His father, Lester Grinspoon, actually was a participant in the 70s as we were starting to bring cannabis into the mainstream and look at how we might use it clinically. And finally, a case study. This is one of my favorite clients, Lorraine, sweet Lorraine. Her daughter brought her to me. She was a new hospice patient in San Diego. And when I was working with a lot of one-on-one patients in care homes, this was a private facility where they made the physiological principle, the principal choice of allowing cannabinoids to be brought in, because the daughter was reticent to use Seroquel. Seroquel has a black box warning, and she didn't want her mom on that drug. And so what we did was, over time, within a few weeks, we were able to wean off of that drug by instituting some CBD during the day, a 4-to-1 CBD THC in the morning and the afternoon, and a 1-to-1 CBD THC in the evening. She started eating. That was one of the first things she did. She gained weight, her sleep normalized, and once she stopped hallucinating, they were able to cut away those other drugs. And this is an interesting point, because a lot of times people will worry that you're going to give THC to a senior and cause hallucinations. It really is the reverse. When we're using very low doses of these cannabinoids, we can stop that, because we're calming the brain and restoring the chemistry, which would have been causing those hallucinations in the first place. So we can go the right way. And this is pleiotropic, right? This is showing a multimodal approach and a multi-purpose. So in about 2 months, she asked to go to the toilet. She asked I need a toilet. And that was a miracle, because she was incontinent for a long time. And then she was kissing and hugging. She was reaching out to the staff. She was pleasant to her family. She was actually coming on to some of the caregivers and making people laugh. And so her family was so grateful that they were able to have her last 2 years of life like this, as opposed to what the hospice was predicting. So join our free network. We have a lot at holisticcaring.com. We have a network for patients and providers run by nurses and our pharmacist, Charmaine. We have a free introduction to cannabis course that all people can just log in and begin. We have our webinars and webcasts, our podcast, our support. When you sign up for the newsletter on our website, you are able to download a free medical cannabis guide, which has beautiful infographics that explain it all in very quick little boxes and walk you through this. We have our Green Nurse approved marketplace, where you can buy vetted CBD. We've done all of the vetting for you. You can choose products and call the nurse line to help us guide you. And then all of our patient and professional programs are on there. So if you want to become a cannabis health coach, if you are a clinician, a care manager, a nurse, a doctor, please take some of our programs. And we have a targeted learning for patients with respect to Parkinson's and MS, Alzheimer's and dementia, chronic pain. So a lot of these targeted learning lessons are right there for you. And then mentoring for clinicians. How do you dial this in and add it to your practice? We are here for you as consultants for that. And of course, one-on-one consultations for adults. And then we have pediatric and geriatric packages, because when you're starting kids and elders on this, they need a little more TLC, and we want to provide that for you so that we can assuage your fears. And like I said to many patients, take my hand, I'm going to walk you through this process, and we're going to do this right. So we're giving people options they didn't used to have, and it couldn't mean more to us to be able to do this work. So help us go forward and share this news, share our website, and our good enthusiasm.
All right. This has been Clinical Conversations with Nurse Sherri and Nurse Elisabeth. Today we presented on aging life care, Alzheimer's disease, dementia, and cannabis care. Remember, everyone, what it's all about. It's about living your best life and helping others do the same.
God bless.